Hey traders, this is Christian from Hertz, Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Thursday, June 7th. Big story today was Brazil. I'm going to talk. I'm going to just lead off with this just for a minute because this was a pretty big story today. Brazil was down big. This is something that started last week and that kind of came to a head. This was back last Monday when we were off. And I had mentioned this. I said nobody's talk. I said I don't know why nobody's talking about this. But when we were off for Memorial Day, the Brazil ETF, the whole Brazil market was down about 4%, and that was in here. I think I want to say that this is here. I'm not going to match it up perfectly with the day, but a pretty decent move down here, and nobody was making any reference to it at all. People were talking about Italy even when we came back. So yeah, I mean they've got a number of things going on there. So I don't know. I'm not a Brazil. I'm not an expert on Brazil, but it seems like there's been things brewing there for the last couple of weeks. They've had all kinds of strikes going on. They've had currency things going on. So what does this mean, right? In terms, if you're an emerging market specialist, or if you trade a lot of emerging markets, this is going to affect you. But did this affect our market today? A little bit. I mean, so first of all, I have a chart up here. I just wanted to talk about because it is pretty interesting that this many shares of this ETF traded today. I think it was 117 million. I didn't check the after hours, but it was about 117 million shares that traded. Notice back on 519. That was the record. It was 177 million shares. I'm going from memory, but I think it was 177 million shares. So there was more shares. You can see it's a bigger volume bar. We do have some support back here. It's a little bit different looking. This wasn't as this is actually a bigger pullback from high to low than this was. But I remember this was a pretty big thing. This was also, political headlines, if I remember correctly, about somebody leaving there and some kind of disruption in their government there. So that was a big one-day drop, but this is bigger, in terms of move down. So what happens, to our market when something like this happens, which things kind of accelerated, when first of all, our markets were pretty much priced to perfection, right? The VIX got below 12 yesterday. We talked about all this stuff in the trading room yesterday. When the VIX gets as low as it is, the market becomes priced to perfection. Any bad news, regardless of what it is, whether it's something political going on here, whether it's real bad earnings report by somebody, some analyst coming out with a bad note, or something like this going on in Brazil, it's people are going to run for the hills a little bit, right? They get worried. Oh my God, what's going on in Brazil? Is it going to affect us? I'm going to sell. And that is basically a knee-jerk reaction, especially when you have the run that we've had in a couple of the areas of the market, such as technology, and that's been an area that has seen, which if you're a member of the Tribeca Trade Group, you know that I read a newsletter on the weekends, and I've talked about how overbought tech has been. I think there's been about $2 to $2.5 billion that have flowed into technology ETFs over the last 2 weeks, over the last two and a half weeks. They've actually slowed down a little bit. I think yesterday we saw a day of outflows, but really they've been there's a lot of money that's rushed in. It's kind of a contrarian sell indicator. I know I'm mentioning this sounds all hindsight, and you're like, you're probably hearing that, but we go over this on a day-to-day basis. I talked a bit about this on Twitter yesterday. You could see my post on Twitter last night. I got out of 90% of my technology in my option portfolio. In my cash portfolio, I did not do that. I talked about getting out, but I actually just stayed the course with things like FDN, which got super overbought. So here's this is the Fang ETF, right? I call it the Fang ETF because the Fang names are the biggest weights in this ETF. If you just want to trade Fang, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Netflix, and this is a great ETF for you. But look at how overbought this thing got. Whenever these sector ETFs get above 75, it's time to take profits. So it could continue higher. It's already had had a mini correction here. It hasn't really lost the 20-day, or just barely lost the 5-day. So, it was really ripe for a pullback today. So if you follow what I've been doing in the trading room, then perhaps I saved you a little bit of money. All those trades that I had on, I was long through various times in the last couple of weeks. Just to here, it's on my Twitter page. So I wanted to go over the option alert as well. I wanted to go over today's option volume, but just so that I'm not making this stuff up, you can look at my tweets from the other day. This is not coming up. Let's see. Let's see if I could find it. Well, I think you know what I'm getting at. I'm trying to get it quickly, but here we go. Yeah, I mean, and some of which I didn't get out exactly at the highs, such as Amazon. But I was in a nice call spread in Nvidia, which made money. I was in Apple, Vive, XLNX. There's a couple other technology names that I loaded up on as well. But it's time to take profits, and this is good. The takeaway from this is to kind of learn too. If you did not do that, or if you didn't take off as much trades as you think you should have, this is all about learning. The trading is all about learning from different things. We had an enormous swing to the upside in all these technology stocks. You want to, no one is going to pick the exact opposite high. You could leave that last runner on. And you're going to get beat up on the last runner, but you've already taken the profits. So, and then it's kind of a rinse and repeat. You go back to cash, which is really tough to do in this market when everything is moving to the upside. But you kind of hide out for a couple days, wait for when you get that volatility, and then you stand ready to kind of redeploy, or at least to kind of swing trade, which is what I did a little bit to. Day trade, which is what I did a little bit today. I was on the Benzinga pre-market show this morning. You could check that out on benzinga.com. I actually just retweeted that if you follow me on Twitter. But what I talked about this morning, they asked me what I'm looking at. We talked about the retail names, which looks like we have another one that is popping pretty good. This is we were actually looking at this name right before the close. It was brought up that this is another retail name, and the options were tough. It priced similar to SIG. They were the options market maker. The calls were not going for free. It's expensive. They were implying a 14% move. So that means that the option prices are elevated, and they're expensive. So they were implying a 14% move. I think we're maybe a little bit above that. So, I looked at a particular trade for this. I looked at, again, just like I did for SIG, selling a put spread. So that was a trade that we talked about in the room today. I didn't take it, but that trade would have worked. Again, whenever you see something like that where the implied, I was looking at selling the 30-25 put spread was the trade that I was looking at. But regardless, keep playing these names until they stop working. Once it stops. Once some name gets really smacked on earnings, then this is over with. But for now, I think we're kind of at the tail end of it. Restoration Hardware reports next week. I think that's another name that could look. It actually came all the way back today, by the way. So you could see that candle now. It's on a breakout. It did fire off an MACD crossover, but a pretty interesting looking candle today. So that report's on the 11th. So that's coming up just around the corner. That's next week. So what I wanted to talk about as I'm talking about these individual names, I did take a couple trades today. I put on diamonds, and I know this is tough because a lot of equities were kind of overbought, but this actually held up pretty well. This, you could see that the candle for today, not a big range in the diamonds and the industrial names at all. So they've got a little bit of strength. I put on a call spread for this one. I don't mind sharing that. I think I went up to 260. What did I do? 257, 265. July 27th call spread. That was one of my few trades today. What else did I do today? I really used the value areas once we were selling off pretty big on Brazil. If you go to the 1 hour bar, which I use a lot for this, but I traded, I'll show you right here. I traded the Salesforce weekly calls. I bought these for 49 cents. That was at 150. Why did I do that? I was looking for something that was kind of, it's a quality name that just kind of got smoked with everything else. And right into support. So when I put these trades on, when I look for a day trade, which I don't day trade that often unless I think there's really an opportunity. And I thought there was a pretty good opportunity in a couple names that just went a little bit too far to the downside. And then I start to look, is there support? There was really nice support at 130. So this trade worked really well for me. By the time I got out of it, 130 paid 49 cents. Now I took targets all along the way, but that was the highest target. I also bought a little bit of BABA. BABA, similar setup here on the 1 hour bar. Not exactly the same, but didn't actually touch the top of value, but you had that support right there. So didn't work quite as well as Salesforce, but worked pretty well. So nice bounce there. I was able to make a little bit of money on that one. And I really didn't do much else today. I bought a little bit of Dunkin'. I gave this as a setup to members last night. And I took the diamonds trade, and that was it. I really didn't do much else today. Thank goodness I took a target in EEM. That trade. We were talking about that today. Kind of a little bit of strategy with taking targets. Taking targets. People always ask me, how do you take targets in options? Well, it's a little bit mechanical, but EEM was up big yesterday. So I kind of forced the target into the close yesterday at 52 cents. I originally had my target out at 54 cents, a little bit mechanical. But if you can't get it, you don't want to be, I don't want to be rigid and say, hey, I got to hit 54 cents. That's kind of stupid. Take your target, take the profits, because you never know when something like this is going to happen. And EEM, by the way, am I on the daily chart? I guess I am on the daily chart. But right back below, it had one close above, barely closed above the 200-day moving average and moved back below. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. It's still above this downward trend line, but not what I wanted to see. I kept this trade on. It's marking right back to my original cost basis. So again, I think just smart to take profits in these option trades, especially shorter term option trades. You have to take targets. You really do. So that's that. A couple other sectors, a couple other trades that I thought were interesting. Some of the things that we saw yesterday. We saw some call buying in Boeing yesterday. I think Boeing, you have a little bit of an inside day. That's fine. Energy outperformed today. Consumer staples outperformed. There was a little bit of call buying in some consumer staples names, Procter and Gamble, CLX. I'm sorry, but these names, they're going to pop every now and then from being oversold. But I don't know. I didn't chase, and thankfully, if you don't kind of position ahead of time in these things, there's no reason, in my opinion, to chase green. At all in some of these names that have really been beaten up. Sometimes they bounce a little bit and then they go back to their downtrend. So that's my opinion. In terms of call activity, there really wasn't much else. There was some little stuff. It kind of picked up. We did see a little bit of dip buying this afternoon, but a little bit of Goldman, a little bit of FCX calls, a little bit of BAC. VKTX was one name. There was a call spread in MGM. These names look pretty beaten up, but nothing that really enticed me to do that. So, I mentioned as well today, even though my P&L ended up, I was down midday. I said, hey, I'm not really changing much. I'll add some things around the edges. But I like how I'm positioned. I switched a bit more over to some bigger cap names, some industrial names. I mentioned the diamonds, which I get, in the diamonds, whenever you trade one of these ETFs, index sector, you always want to take a look my opinion. Again, this video is for information purposes only, but my opinion is you always want to know what's in here and whether you like the individual stocks, whether you like the charts of the individual stocks. So McDonald's acted very well today. Home Depot, I'll just flash through a couple of these charts, but MCD, real nice move above that 200-day moving average. I actually like that a lot. You just finally cleared this. This is a name that has not done anything. It's moved back. There's been some sideways volatility, but really a nice looking candle in McDonald's. Home Depot, which I've talked about now for a couple days, excellent looking move today in a bad tape. So always, again, I'm saying always a lot. But another thing when you've got a little bit of volatility like today, again, I say a little bit of volatility. SPY's finished flat, Diamonds finished up today, but take a look at in a tougher tape what names outperform, and you may find that those names may continue to do just that, especially when you have an up day. So a couple other so these names, when I go through one by one, I talked about Boeing already. Caterpillar had, I don't know if it was their analyst day, but they spoke at a Deutsche Bank conference. They had some positive things to say. I would say not yet for Caterpillar, but maybe keep an eye on, maybe set an alert at 159.5. So yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty constructive, and I'm pretty happy the way that I'm positioned. You just have to realize that not every day is gonna go up. So, but overall, I think the trends look pretty good in the U.S. So we'll leave it there. Kind of sticking with it. All right, guys, have a great night and see you tomorrow.